What's going on, crew? Hey, what's going on, crew? It's K Rob and Mr. Moss in the house once again. Normally, this is a Triple B's get down, but we're gonna start doing something a little bit different here going forward. Every Friday, Byron and I are gonna get together and we're gonna talk. We're gonna do a little bit of fantasy sports talk, mainly with our fantasy football league that we created, Brew League Football. Well, first, and we'll get into that shortly. We'll also talk about last night's big Thursday night football win for the Chicago Bears, finally ending their losing
Yep.
streak, a
That,
big
that
trade
should.
that just took place as well, and also you've got a weird th- think tank going on this week with your quarterback. So
Let's be honest. My whole roster's a think tank.
normally I think people would wanna look at you, cross-eyed a little bit, like, what the hell do you even think? But let's just get it out of the way first and foremost before
Let's
we actually
Yeah.
go
Before we
ahead.
get to this, let's go over where we're at in our league, what week
Yeah,
we're in, and like what the current standings are team wise.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and pull up. It's a Brew League football on ESPN.com fantasy football, and you currently are tied for first place. We got a
Yep.
three-way tie for first, and I'm trying to get into that as I stand at 2-2, and I'm currently 50 points down.
Yep.
Playing against my buddy Scott Borkran, the Borkran Urinals, and I swear that is the name of his team in every league he's in.
Yep.
No bullshit. He got a big jump last night due to an amazing performance by one of his starters that we will talk about shortly. But you are 3-1 right now, and
And the only reason I'm 3-1 is because week 3 majority of my roster underperformed, and I just couldn't make up the difference when my opponent's roster performed very well. I got
yeah,
hit with that, unfortunately.
yeah. I mean, I started out of the gate slowly in week one. Josh Allen is my fantasy starting quarterback, and if anybody watched the opening Monday night game with the Jets and the Bills, you saw what happened. He
Yep,
played terribly.
yep. I'm so happy that happened because it gave me the win against you in a matchup I was expected to lose.
And I was thoroughly looking forward to giving you some shit about. But it didn't. But it didn't happen. But I've rebounded, and I'm 2-2 right now. Currently projected to lose because of the efforts of one DJ Moore last night for the Chicago Bears, and he went off against the Washington Commanders, in which the Bears also ended their franchise record 14 game losing streak with a 40-20 win on the road last night in Landover. And DJ Moore last night had 8 receptions for 230 yards and 3 touchdowns, 49 fantasy points in our league. I'm
Yep,
already way down, and
yep.
now projected to lose by 20. We will see what happens.
Hey,
But
anything can happen. So I mean, he's already had one player play way under what he's supposed to. So all you really need is a couple players to pop off, and you've got a chance.
I mean, we'll see, and while we have it, we'll take a look at the players that I have going this week. We'll get into your matchup as well. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills are at home against, or actually, they're not at home. Technically, I'm going to say they're on the road because they're playing the Jacksonville Jaguars in an international series game, and the Jaguars are they're basically unstoppable in Europe for whatever reason. Nobody knows
Yeah.
why. It doesn't matter if it's Trevor Lawrence at quarterback or Blake Bortles back in the day.
Yep.
The Jaguars, for whatever reason, are just unbeatable in Europe. He is currently Josh Allen is currently projected at 20 points. I've got Miles Sanders, whose status is currently questionable. He is the running back for the winless Carolina Panthers, and I mean he's the best running back. I've got second with the DeAndre Swift, and I'll get into that shortly. But the Panthers play at the Detroit Lions in a game that I definitely got them losing Sunday. But he's sitting at 13 points. DeAndre Swift for the Philadelphia Eagles and their lethal rushing attack. I'm torn because they're playing my Los Angeles Rams and they come to SoFi for a 3 o'clock kick. He's projected at just under 16 points. My big eater is always Justin Jefferson,
Yep.
and the Minnesota Vikings are playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and because of that game, we're gonna have a lot to talk about with what you're planning to do at quarterback later on.
Yep.
Currently projected at 23 points. I still don't. I get it now. I totally get it. But at first, I'm like, well, what the hell's wrong with you? You know?
Yep. We'll get into my thought process on a lot of my moves because we'll talk probably a little bit like how like I've in our league I have made the most player roster adjustments that everybody else.
You've actually made more than everybody combined. I've only made one. You've made 11.
Yep.
You're definitely the mover and shaker of our league. I've also got George Pickens, the second-year receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, as Pittsburgh hosts the Baltimore Ravens for a noon kickoff. He's sitting at 13 points. I've got George McGriddle Kittle, one of the best tight ends in the league. The 49ers are going to play the Dallas Cowboys in a massive, massive clash in a game
That's gonna be
that
a tough one.
that should be a Monday Night Football game. That should be Monday Night Football, but it is Sunday Night Football, and he's sitting at 10 points. And for my flex, Garrett Wilson, one of the best young receivers in the NFL for the New York Jets, at the Denver Broncos, who are absolutely floundering at this
Yeah.
point.
So that could be a boom for you with the Bron. If the Broncos can't get their act together, I think you could probably expect with Garrett Wilson probably 20 plus.
17. He's sitting at 17 right now. Got the Miami Dolphins defense, which I think is just going to have a field day against the New York Derps. It's the New York Giants, and I know anybody can beat anybody any given day in the NFL. We know how this goes. However, this Giants offense is putrid, absolutely awful. Sit two games at home now. They're going on the road to play the Miami Dolphins, and that's going to be a noon kickoff. Let me tell you something right now. The New York Giants have 46 points in 4 games. 6 of those are at home. This team is awful. They're absolutely awful. Miami Dolphins projected for almost 9 fantasy points for their defensive special teams. That would be huge for me. And I had to make one adjustment due to the Chargers being on a bye this week, so I had to go get a new kicker. And I felt the safest choice was 49ers kicker Jake Moody, considering how explosive the 49ers are offensively.
I mean, you could have requested a trade with me, and I could have lent you Butker for a week.
I don't trade with terrorists.
How am I a terrorist?
Don't worry about it, terrorist. That's my lineup right now for this week, and I don't have a whole lot going on the bench because I have 3 players on buys right now. So
and you got one player, Higgins, projected to get no points this week either. So you're out 4 players.
He's not expected to play. I know. I got T. Higgins. See, I got him sitting on the bench, and the Bengals just they look so bad right now. They look so bad, and it bothers me because of the players that they have. You would think, well, Cincinnati should be a lot better, but that offensive line is just awful.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I drafted Joe Mixon, and I dropped him.
So let's take a look at what you got going on this week. Obviously, you won handedly last week, 125-49 over Team Crowder, and you're currently in a first-place tie at 3-1. Now, before we get to the big topic at hand, let's look at the rest of your lineup this week. Kyron Williams is not a guy who puts up a crap load of yards, and his yards per carry is not efficient. However,
he's a workhorse.
He's finding the end zone for the Los Angeles Rams, and I need that just on a personal note so we can beat the Eagles this week. And shout out to my buddy Chris, who lives in Carl Junction, is from Philly, lifelong Eagles everything. Yep. So love you, but sorry, buddy, we gotta give it to you. He's projected at 17.5 this week. Raheem Mostert, 12 points for the Miami Dolphins because they're expected to split carries with Devin Achane. And also, there's always a possibility that the Dolphins could just air it out on the Giants. He's sitting at 12. Yeah, it could be either or. Stephon Diggs, fantastic. He had a big time game against the Dolphins last week.
Yeah, he did.
Now he's going up against another solid defense. It's an 8:30 a.m. kickoff Central Time because the game will be overseas. 18 points projected against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Romeo Doubs is a guy you just picked up this week, I believe.
Yes.
For the Green Bay Packers. So talk about it.
Well, for this week, I have got two people on bye. I've got the Browns defense on a bye, so I had to pick up a new defense. I decided the best option was the Lions because they seem to be fairly consistent about getting 7 to 10 points a week. That's reliable. It's good numbers. And then I was also needed a new wide receiver because Keenan Allen is on a bye this week, and he's been a big provider for me.
Yeah.
The ones I had previously, were underperforming on most of the projections, except for maybe one pop off, and it's just unreliable.
Yeah.
Even though Romeo Doubs is projected to only have a little under 11 points, here's where the factor comes in. Week 1, 18.6. Week 2, 5. Week 3, 18.3. Week 4, 18.5. He's overperforming. So
Yeah.
even though the numbers are saying, yeah, 10 points, he's already over projecting. So I think it's a safe bet that I could probably expect him to go over 10 points.
And here's the thing with Keenan Allen, his entire career is whenever he's been healthy, incredibly dependable, very
Yep.
reliable guy. And because the Chargers are very thin at wide receiver right now, without Mike Williams and also with the loss of Austin Eckler, who is the most used running back in terms of total touches in the NFL, passing and rushing. Keenan Allen's become a higher priority, and he is older. However, he's still
He's
showing he can get
he's
it done.
reliable. I mean, hell, week he's had like 2 big weeks. Week 2, 31.1. Week 4, week 3, 45.46.
Mm,
So
just
like
crushing it.
he's provided for me. So it's like he's become pretty much my star wide receiver between him and Diggs.
Now it is a shame. I do think that you should have started Adam Thielen as he is projected higher than Romeo Dobbs. However, Carolina is winless. Their rookie quarterback looks terrible right now. The offense looks terrible, and you're going up
Detroit.
against the Detroit Lions, who are
So I would cancel my
continuously ascending.
so essentially I would cancel myself out with my defense if I put him in. So it's kind of like if he pops off, he pops off. If he doesn't, he doesn't. He's a good spot, good wide receiver to have that's reliable in the bench if I need him. So it's a I'm pretty happy with that. Unfortunately, was not able to get this week that other running back from Miami because of waiver order. When you're sitting at first, you're the last one to get anything off a waiver after the waiver's clear, and I was kind of pissed off.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you're constantly shuffling. Now, Romeo Dobbs could definitely, um, he could definitely have a big week because the Raiders' defense is just awful all over the place. They're bad.
hmm
They get to the quarterback at a moderate rate because of Max Crosby, who's an absolute stud. He's a star. Other than that, there's not a lot going on, and
uh,
Jordan Love could really have a big game, and Romeo Dobbs could be the recipient of that.
yep. Then for tight end, I got Sam Laporta. He's actually somebody on our league dropped him, and I picked him up.
And I told you, always get a tight end from the University of Iowa because some water it does not matter.
Yep.
His production was low at Iowa because last year offensively they were just putrid, and historically they're not a big passing offense. But that school just produces tight ends like it's nobody's
Yep.
business.
And the thing
Um,
is like week 1, yeah, he did perform that well. Again, he's a rookie, but he's picked up pace. Week 2, 11.3. Week 3 against Atlanta, 22.4. Then last week against Green Bay, 9.6.
yeah.
So
Also,
from what I'm looking at it, it's kind of like I feel like I'm in a fairly comfortable spot with him as my go-to tight end. My other one is Hunter Henry. He was one that I think a lot of people overlooked because it's New England, but like when I picked him up, he was performing very well. He's only had one bad week for me. Like he's mainly been projected at maybe 9-10 points, but like 2 weeks, his first 2 weeks, 16.6, 17.2 at week 2 against Miami. And then against Jets, he had a bad week, but Dallas he had 9.3. So like in my tight end spots, I've got two fairly solid tight ends that will either perform reasonably well or overperform.
well, in the case of Hunter Henry, he also plays on a team that does not have an explosive passing game and lacks vertical threats downfield at wide receiver. So, because the Patriots are they're a high efficiency, low volume passing game, that helps out a guy like Henry. And he's
Mm-hmm.
not going to go out there and stretch the field. You've also got James Cook, which I think is a very fine play against the Jaguars. He's projected at just under 15 points. The Detroit defense against Carolina for a noon kickoff, 7 points. And you have Brandon Aubrey as your kicker to fill in on a bye. He's the Dallas Cowboys kicker. 8 points is
No, actually,
projection.
actually, Brandon Aubrey's become my primary kicker
Oh, has he now?
over what's his name?
Harrison
Harrison.
Butker.
Yeah, the thing is, Butker is getting just his numbers, whereas Aubrey is getting more. He's averaging about 10 points a week.
And he's projected at 8 this week.
But if you look at his numbers, I'll pull them up real quick.
Says he got 12 last week. And he's averaging 12.
Week 1, 10 points. Week 2, 18. Week 3, 11. Week 4, 12. Yeah, he might pretend only get 8 points, but it's the Dallas is getting him his opportunities.
But also, they're getting opportunities because their defense is forcing an assload of turnovers.
Exactly.
Also, that ain't happening against the 49ers. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Maybe not, but we'll wait and see. I think that is a very good move on my part, picking him up, putting him in there because again, he's averaging above what he's projected.
Of course. Now we got all that covered. We haven't addressed your quarterback situation.
We'll get to that second. One thing I will note is right now I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown sitting on the bench because he's questionable. If he can show up, if he is moved to healthy, he's probably going to be put into the lineup.
Yeah, you'd have to take out Dobbs.
I don't have to pull out Dobbs. I think I might. Well, again, it comes down to do I take out Williams and put Cook in that spot and just get my reliable about 14, 15 points from Cook, or do I go for broke?
No, what you do is that you bench Raheem Mostert and you slot James Cook back to your number 2 running back spot, and you still take Dobbs out for Amon-Ra St. Brown if he is declared ready to play by Sunday. That's what you do.
I don't know. Like Mostert, I think Mostert can pop off. I mean, he's popped off 2 weeks already. I think he can do it again against the Jets. So I think my best bet is go for broke. When it comes to this fantasy football stuff, I'm playing the most unorthodox way of it.
So far, it's working. I don't like that it's working.
Everybody else is looking at what's projected and playing what's the most projected. I'm looking at how the players are performing overall.
But you've also got to look at, and thankfully, you've got me to fill you in more on what to look for in these teams defensively that they're facing and matchups and who's in, who's out, so on and so forth. Be thankful for me. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Now,
but things is, Dobbs is against the Raiders. He has only predicted at about 11 points. Raiders are garbage.
Facts.
I think it's to take the chance that he pops off again.
Yeah.
I think that's better than trying to go for a reliable 14 or whatever points. Like, get it wrong, Cook's a good running back, but he's not exploding. He's not booming. He's not had a boom all season for me. He's getting about his number, his projected numbers. That's it. My matchups tend to, outside of last week, tend to be fairly close, and I have to play it as though I got to play my matchups off of how they're doing, and also again what the matchups are team wise. And that's kind of what we'll get to my quarterback choice for the week in a second. But like like I said, I'm not playing for projected numbers. I'm looking at projected numbers, sure, when I'm looking at pick up players, but I'm also looking at what players are overperforming off of their projections week in, week out.
Yeah. Now, and a perfect example of that, obviously, is Puka Nacua of my Los Angeles Rams. Nobody had him in anything, and now this guy basically is
in every freaking roster you can.
Yeah, just showed up out of nowhere, similar to our superstar receiver Cooper Kupp. He was a 3rd round choice, 3rd or 4th round, and Puka was a 4th rounder as well. And it just showed up, and all of a sudden it's catching every ball. I'm like, wait, who is this dude?
Yep.
And that's exactly what it reminded me of is Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
Now,
and a player I had for a little bit, but never actually played him was Tutu Atwell.
Tutu Atwell.
I apologize. I'm terrible with names. But he, because of Kupp being injured and whatnot, he was getting a lot of touches, and he was overperforming.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with Kupp coming back, he's going to get less touches. So I had him in case he was going to be necessary, but with him getting less touches now, he's off in the wind.
And I basically told you that we're going to probably start using him more as a 3rd or 4th option, and also in special teams. So you're probably best to just cut your losses there with Tutu, because we drafted him with the intention of him stepping up. Now I believe this is his 3rd year with the Rams, but at the same time we're a passing team. attack that tends to throw in a high volume because we have Matthew Stafford. He's a gunslinger. We get out and we sling it a bunch, especially when we can't run the football. And now getting Cooper Kupp back to go with what Puka's doing, you best believe we're going to be throwing it in high volume to those two, as well as our
Yep.
tight end Tyler Higbee.
Yep.
Here's where you tripped me up earlier this week. Initially, and then I remembered. Oh wait, and I looked
Yep.
at the numbers and thought, yeah, this totally checks out. I absolutely would.
So for those who don't know, I not yet, but my primary quarterback for the season has been Patrick Mahomes.
As you
He's
do.
he's I mean he makes everybody better. He gets his points, but unfortunately, it's just he's not really booming. He's been reliable about 20 points per week. This week's my matchup, I'm expected to lose by about 5-6 points.
Uh-huh.
So I had a wild card on my bench by the name of Tua
Tagovailoa.
Yes, and
You need
they're playing the Giants this week. So I'm hoping, and the thing is, he's had two really good games this year. He's already either had or broken 30 points twice this season. So my thought process is against the Giants, he goes big and just straight up goes wild. But again, for this week's matchup, it's gonna be kind of rough because my opponent has Tyreek Hill.
Yep. Wow. Yeah. That's a double-edged sword, ain't it?
Yep, but I'm hoping that Tua will pop off, get big numbers, hopefully outscore Lamar Jackson this week. Fingers crossed.
Well, and as you said, and everybody typically they just go with projections. Okay, this is what this guy's expected to do against this defense this week, and based on their performances and so on and so forth. But you did your homework and looked at matchups. Now the Vikings are a middle of the pack team in terms of points allowed, where the Giants, I mean, yeah. And then when you combine that, see, I'll pull up numbers right now for Tua, as he currently has a higher quarterback rating in QBR than Patrick Mahomes right now, just right now. He's averaging 326.5 yards per game. He's got a 79 QBR. And I'll pull up Mahomes' numbers right now, and it's definitely never a case of, oh, he's bombing. We know he's not. Come on now. Mahomes right now is sitting, he's got averaging 251 yards per game, 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions with a 92 rating and a 71.9 QBR. Statistically, Tua is a better fantasy play than Patrick Mahomes. What Mahomes is doing, that's why the Chiefs are undefeated in tight games, maybe with the help of some very bad ref ball, but he is finding ways to get his team to the victory. However, and I do attribute almost all of this these volume numbers for Tua to the Denver game and the game with the Chargers, but numbers don't lie right now. And you've got Tyreek Hill, who is a high candidate early on for NFL MVP.
Yep.
Same as Tua right now.
Yep.
That offense is absurd.
Yeah. Also, another downside is my opponent also has Jalen Waddle.
When is he back?
He's back.
Oh, is he? Woo! And speaking of the Miami Dolphins, they just got richer in a trade with the Chicago Bears, who, as we mentioned earlier, finally ended their losing streak. And this report coming from Adam Schefter, of course, that the Miami Dolphins just acquired Chase Claypool from the Miami Dolphins have acquired Chase Claypool from the Chicago Bears. And we'll get the details of that trade here shortly. I believe there were 2025 draft picks involved with this trade. Basically, Claypool is a talented player, but incredibly unmotivated and a very bad scheme fit with head coach Matt Eberflus and offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. And I'll tell you exactly what they're acquiring in Claypool. 6'4", 238-pound big body receiver. Granted, this year only 4 catches for 51 yards, but he's like I say, he's very talented. 62 catches, 800 yards, 9 touchdowns his rookie year with the Steelers. The production hasn't been there, but the talent is. The opportunity for him is to absolutely step up and be a big-bodied guy to open up the field for Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, who are smaller, but they're easily the fastest duo of wide receivers in the NFL. So this is a possibility of Chase Claypool could be a fantasy steal for somebody. He'd be a low risk acquisition with big reward potential.
Yep.
So that absolutely comes into play. And in your matchup, let's see. Let's take a look as you are playing. So you're facing your brother-in-law, right?
Yep.
So how the heck's that gonna go down?
I don't know, but
How do you feel about that?
I'm nervous because it's like I don't really have any like real big point numbers up there really,
Yeah.
and he drafted fairly well. Like he got Lamar Jackson, Tyreek Hill. Like I'm up against a rock and a hard place this week. It's gonna come down to if he has some bad matchups and if I can have the right matchups.
Yes, and that's usually what it always comes down to. It's just a matter of matchups and luck of the draw. Here we do have a little bit more on the Claypool trade. The Miami Dolphins and Chicago Bears will also swap 2025 draft picks, physical pending, with Miami giving Chicago a 6th-round pick in exchange for a 7th-rounder. So again, low risk value being exchanged in terms of futures for Chase Claypool. Now if you're facing your brother-in-law, you're going to have a little bit of bragging rights if he beats you, and
Yeah.
vice versa. Think about maybe placing a little friendly wager with him.
I can't do that. I don't. I only place wagers when I'm fairly confident I can win it. I don't make bad bets. And
Okay.
the numbers right now don't stack in my favor. So it's a friendly bragging rights thing, but it's like I said, I don't make bets that I can't almost guarantee I got in the bag.
All right. So you don't feel secure enough to do so.
No, hell, this whole league I don't feel secure enough to do it. Why do you think I'm making so many moves on my roster? Because I have to find out the best places to get the most points possible each week. I don't have a roster that, like, as a whole, is probably reliable to go straight forward. I have to be constantly watching who's performing well, who's not performing well, make roster jumps whenever I can, and get the best player possibles I can. Like right now, my biggest hole really is going to be my running backs. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've got James Cook. He's a good running back, but he's not a point maker running back.
Well, that's because the Buffalo Bills are running back by committee, and also Josh Allen runs the ball too.
Yeah, so it's kind of a he's a reliable points per week, but I need to find some explosive players that can push my points up each week.
Yeah.
And right now, there's just not any running backs out there that are really like, oh my god, reliable in like 18 points.
That's because you don't. That's because you don't have Christian McCaffrey, who is the MVP of the NFL right now. If you ask me, this guy has been unbelievable for the 49ers, and we'll pull his numbers real quick just to let everybody know. For those who don't, CMC actually just broke the record for the 49ers for the most consecutive games with a touchdown scored. He scored a touchdown in 14 consecutive games dating back to last season. And also would like to clarify that is a record that was held by Jerry Rice. And if you break a Jerry Rice record, you're doing work. So far this season, 459 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, averaging 5.7 yards per carry. And he also, so far this year in the receiving game, let's see, he's 18 receptions for 141 yards and a touchdown. I would also like to preface this by saying he's the only player in NFL history to make first team All-Pro as a wide receiver and running back at the same time.
Damn.
And that was in 2019, where he ran for 1,387 yards, 15 touchdowns, and had 116 catches for 1,005 yards and 4 touchdowns. And did not get any MVP votes, which I think is BS. And he didn't even win Offensive Player of the Year that year. But just saying, that's my MVP right now. And I don't care what anybody says. You can still give an MVP in today's NFL to a running back. Pay them properly. Thank you very much. So before we go on to our predictions for this week, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about your matchup?
5.
Okay, so you're 50-50. Toss of the
I,
coin.
it's a close matchup. It can go either way. Like I said, it just comes down to who pops off, what happens across the board. It's gonna come down again. It comes down to how the games play out. It's too close to call.
Yeah. Okay. Right now, with what DJ Moore did, really put me behind the eight ball. I'm 50 points behind. I'm gonna say about. I gotta be honest, about a four right now, because I still feel good and I feel confident in my guys, but that man went out and showed his behind. So
Yep.
shout out to DJ Moore and the Chicago Bears. Also, very big shout out to an unfortunate passing of the Hall of Famer for the Chicago Bears, the icon, the man who is the reason they are the monsters of the Midway, Dick Butkus, number 51, as quoted by Hall of Famer Paul Hornung, the meanest son of a bitch to ever play professional football. And he always made sure that when you got hit by him, you knew who it was. But rest in peace to Dick Butkus, owner of one of the 10 manliest mustaches in the history of human history. Moving forward, we're going to wrap things up by doing our predictions this week for Week 5 in the NFL. Obviously, Thursday Night Football has already taken place. Early morning matchup again in London. Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills. Current line 5.5 for Buffalo. Over under 48.5. Who do you got?
Uh, I'm gonna go against the Jaguars.
Okay, so you're going to go ahead and take Buffalo.
I think Buffalo is strong enough in their game that they could easily take it. I think it's gonna be a very close game, but I think that it favors Buffalo. They've been playing fairly well this season.
Yeah, they put 48 points on the same team last week that just hung 70 on the Denver Broncos.
Yep.
However, as I always say, the Jaguars all of a sudden turn into Superman every time they play in London. Nobody knows why, still to this day. I'm going to go ahead and give this one to Jacksonville. Extremely close. Remember, they are a playoff team from last year. They took the Chiefs to the limit in the divisional round.
Yep.
There's just something different about them playing in London. You don't bet against them. It's like betting against Deion Sanders and Tom Brady. You don't do it.
That's why I say it's gonna be a very close game. It could go either way, but I
All right.
think I think you can't bet against Buffalo. Again, they dropped 49 on the team that dropped 70. Like they're playing out their minds, and they're playing with on a pretty good high. If they can say like, yeah, we did that to the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah. And they were the talk of the town. And right now they are is probably the NFL's most explosive offense. Now, next matchup featuring two young teams, one struggling at quarterback, the other thriving, and probably and are playing way ahead of schedule, if you ask me. All right, y'all, we are back. Apologies for the tech difficulties. Like literally, internet ain't interneting for us.
Yep,
Uh,
on both sides.
yeah, you had issues with your ISP. I don't think it's my provider. I just think it's my tower. It's weird because I have two wireless adapters in this damn thing, so I don't get it. But let's get back to where we were, which we were doing predictions for the Houston Texans, Atlanta Falcons. Houston's trending upward with a very bright rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud, who is absolutely obliterating the very truthful stereotype that Ohio State quarterbacks all stink in the NFL. Dude is lighting it up, 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns. They had a big game last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're on the road, 1.5 point underdogs at the Atlanta Falcons, who got obliterated in London last week. Desmond Ridder, the Falcons quarterback, looked awful. On the flip side, Bijan Robinson, the top 10 running back, which it wasn't a vilified pick because of his ability, but in today's NFL, it can be a bit of a red flag to use a top 10 pick on a running back unless they are a guarantee. So far, he looks every bit of the guarantee. I just believe that the Texans are going to go on the road and squeeze out a close win for between two young teams. Once again, over under 41.5. Expected to be a low scoring game. Atlanta 1.5 at home. What are your thoughts?
I think Houston's got this. Like Atlanta is just not really performing super great this year. So I think Houston's a fairly solid team. They have been last couple of years. I think
Actually, they were horrible last year.
okay, that aside, but I think Houston's trending the right way. I think it's gonna be Houston.
I do believe so as well, and it solely comes down to C.J. Stroud and his ability to push the ball downfield and make smart decisions with the football. Nico Collins and Tank Dell, the rookie wide receiver, they're going in the right direction. They're a team, but if this game does get very, very close, I would have Atlanta winning simply because they run the football better. And in crunch time, when you need to milk the clock, you need a running back who can do that. And the Falcons have two of them, in Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. Next up,
Algier though has not been doing well recently.
well, thing is, Atlanta still can they could turn it up and run the football at any time, and they do have a lot of talent. But Desmond Ritter's got to make better decisions with the football. He looked awful against Jacksonville last week in London. This one, I think most everybody is on the same page. Carolina winless, and they're a bad winless team right now. Going to the Troy, a very hungry Lions team that's 3-1. Currently, they're the favorites to win the NFC North. The Lions haven't won a division title since '93. The last division they won does not exist anymore, the NFC Central. Okay. And they're the line, they're 10-point favorites at home, over under 44. And this is with Amon-Ra St. Brown status still as questionable. I don't think it would matter even if he did play.
No, so they've got enough threats as it is. Like Laporta will get, if Amon-Ra doesn't play, Laporta's going to get his touches. And they got a good running back and a decent wide receiver. So I think it's going to be Lions.
Yeah. Next game up, AFC South matchup: Titans at Colts. Tennessee 2.5-point favorites, and they're coming off of a win last week. The Indianapolis Colts lost a heartbreaker in overtime for the youngest team in the NFL, and I can't stress enough how young this team is. They do not have a single player at the age of 30 or older.
Damn.
At all. This is the youngest team in the NFL by far, but they scratched and clawed and forced overtime with their rookie quarterback AR-15 Anthony Richardson, who is, honestly think he's very, very special. We will see how this Colts defense holds up against Derek O. Henry this week, as he's on pace for about a good 1,200 yards so far this season, but the Titans passing attack, Ryan Tannehill, 4 interceptions to 2 touchdowns. Tennessee 2.5 on the road. I'm taking the Colts at home in a close one, over under line 43.
I think I'm going to take Tennessee on this one. I think even though the Colts are young, I think they're still got a lot to get together. I think the Tennessee is just more established in what they're going to do.
As a veteran football team, I can get down with that. I take Indianapolis in a close one. Now this one, come on, Miami 12 at home against the Giants for a noon kickoff.
Miami
47.5. The Giants are completely demoralized as a football team. Then Miami took a big L in a game that could have gone the other way in their favor, because that's how explosive both teams are.
I think the issue is the Miami defense has just not been consistent. They're projected to be a lot better than they are performing.
And now they are also without several figures going into that game, and I could pull up here on my end and see who is currently out with injuries for the Dolphins at this time. See, they are missing Jalen Phillips, who's a starting linebacker of theirs. Teron Armstead also out on the offensive line, and Jalen Ramsey's been out. He's on IR. He's done for the season, and that was a massive loss for the Miami Dolphins. Expected to have him and Xavier Howard locking down receivers. The Dolphins were expected to be a heavy man coverage team this year because of the abilities of both corners. I think they'll be just fine, especially Daniel Jones ain't it. He never really was it, and now the Giants are stuck with an over $30 million price tag because the market said they had to pay him that much to keep him, and he ain't the guy. Miami big in that one. New Orleans at New England. Now this one is a toss-up. Literally, line is even. 39.5 in Foxborough. I believe this is a game actually New England can scratch and claw their way to an ugly win.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be an ugly game. It's probably very low scoring. I think it's gonna come down to who makes the more egregious mistakes.
Yeah, it absolutely will come down to that. Now, Mac Jones 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Neither team absolutely wows anybody offensively, and the Saints. It really with them it comes down to Derek Carr being healthy, um, because they've got better weapons on the outside clearly than New England does, and defensively they have more talent, but you're going to Foxborough, and that's an early kickoff. Gets them out of the elements a little bit. I'm going to take New England in that butt ugly game.
Yep, same.
Speaking of butt ugly football, what the Baltimore Ravens are going to do to the Pittsburgh Steelers, despite the line only being 4.5, I honest to goodness believe that Baltimore's just going to dog walk Pittsburgh.
Don't say
Matt,
that. Don't
no,
say that.
you know why I'm going to say that? 2 words: Matt Canada, the inept offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is absolutely terrible.
I need though I need the Steelers to make the Steelers defense to make it close because I can't have Lamar Jackson running wild.
Well, you better get yourself 11 TJ Watts out there because he's going to have a day. He leads both teams in rush. He's got 220 yards. He's on pace for, let's see, 880 yards and 16 touchdowns. How about
Yeah,
that?
I said I need Steelers to get their heads out of their Steelers defense to get their head out of their ass and keep this man in check.
Well, the only way they can do that is by having some offensive creativity, and Matt Canada ain't it. Here's the problem with that. The Pittsburgh Steelers are notorious for never firing anyone. You know how many head coaches they've had since 1969?
2.
3.
I was close.
No, they don't fire anybody at all. Believe in undying loyalty. So Pittsburgh, it's 4.5. I got the Ravens covering in that one.
Same.
Now this is the highest scoring. Let's take a look. This is one of the highest scoring projected games of the week, is as expected. Eagles at my Rams. The Eagles come in 4-0, but they look like a beatable 4-0. Facing and we come back home after a tough, well fought overtime victory at Indianapolis last week. I wish that we had more efficiency in the passing game when it comes to finishing drives, because Matthew Stafford has a gaggle of yards, but 3 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Puka Nakua has 39 receptions for 501 yards through his first 4 NFL games, but only 1 touchdown. And then the touchdown he caught was the game winner last week in overtime to beat the Colts. We are facing an elite rushing attack, obviously, in the Philadelphia Eagles with DeAndre Swift and Jalen Hurts and his abilities, and the Eagles' nasty, nasty defensive line. They had 78 sacks last season, counting the postseason. They don't blitz, and that's going to cause problems whenever you can't run the football, and the Rams have to be able to run the football with Kyron Williams to keep that defense honest.
Yep. I think it comes down to it's going to come down to Cup and Puka being reliable on the receiving end. But if they don't have Kyrie uh, there to do what he does and just essentially bulldoze his way up the field, I think it's going to be a lot closer. But I think if Kyrie is healthy and is doing what he's been doing all season, plus you got Cup and Puka, I think Rams should come out on top of that one.
Current line Philadelphia 4, and over under is 50, so it is expected to be a high scoring game. That will be a 3:05 kickoff on Fox. Now, and an early tank bowl candidate game, and it shouldn't be because of the talent of one of these teams. Cincinnati 3 at the Arizona Cardinals, who supposedly are, nobody told them whenever they beat Dallas that they're supposed to be leading the tank bowl, but it is over under 45. Joe Burrow's been getting absolutely obliterated. He's also been playing hurt, and the Bengals will not bench him, and they need to preserve that man. He is their franchise. I'm going to give the Bengals the win because
I'm not.
they really need it. However,
They might need it. I
can
think the Cardinals will pull the win off that one.
I can easily see that the Cardinals do run the ball very well with James Conner, who's averaging almost 80 yards rushing per game. And Joshua Dobbs has not gone out and made mistakes as the Cardinals' current starter while they hold over for Kyler Murray to return. Once again, Cincinnati 3 on the road at Arizona. You're taking the Cardinals. I'm taking the Bengals to finally get a much needed W and get some momentum because they're winless on the road. Jets at Broncos. Now this game to me is very misleading, and I say misleading for this reason. If you looked at Russell Wilson's numbers, 1,014 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Boy, that sounds great, doesn't it? Sounds
Mm-hmm.
really great. The Broncos stink. They should
Yep.
not. The Bears blew that game, and of course, a lot of his numbers came in mop-up time when they were getting their backs blown out. Pause by 50 points by the Miami Dolphins. What else are you going to do when you're down 50 points? Throw the ball, and the Dolphins are going to back off on you. But Denver gets 2.5. I got the Jets on the road because they played an extremely inspired game against the Chiefs, and Zach Wilson played the best game he's ever had in his career. I think that
I,
continues.
I think the Jets win that one too.
I think that continues. 43.5 is the over under. Um, the, there's a reason why I feel Kansas City can lose to the Vikings. They're on the road and they're only getting 3.5. This is the highest scoring projected game of the week at 52.5. The Vikings are middle of the pack in everything in terms of points allowed and yards allowed. However, Kirk Cousins, he's such a frustrating player because 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Justin Jefferson, 33 for 543, 3 touchdowns. Those guys are eating, but they're not winning games.
Yeah.
You can beat because Minnesota gets beat at the line of scrimmage, and their head coach Kevin O'Connell makes some fugazi calls in situations that cost them games. But
I
they're 3.5. They're only 3.5 dogs at home, and that's a 325. It's a late start.
I think it's going to come down to I think it's going to come down to which team's going to make mistakes because the thing is Mahomes can't do it himself. He's got to have reliable targets. And the biggest issue with the season has been his targets have not necessarily been the most reliable. I mean, Kelsey's Kelsey. He's going to do what he does. But
those receivers are not what they need to be for him.
no, the thing is the Chiefs in this offseason or whatever, they need to find him some good, reliable receivers.
What they have to do is essentially moneyball their wide receiver room because you're trying to make up for the production of one Tyreek Hill, which they still have not been able to do with the collection of guys that they have, and they've got to do it on a tight budget because there was no way they were going to be able to afford to keep Tyreek and pay Chris
Mahomes.
Jones and Mahomes and Kelsey. I'm taking the Chiefs, and I mean barely. This is going to be another game they escape. But do not be surprised if the Vikings win at home.
And again, this is another reason why the first thing I got Tua starting over Mahomes this week.
There you go. And also Danielle Hunter for the Vikings is among the NFL's league leaders in sacks. Granted, it is extremely hard, damn near impossible to actually sack Patrick Mahomes.
That's one thing I'll say is like they definitely seem to have done better with their O line protecting Mahomes. It's not like that Super Bowl where it was him against Brady and the whole game Mahomes was scrambling.
Yeah, because they were basically down to second and third string guys due to injuries, and one of their starting offensive linemen at the time was doing COVID relief. But also give credit to the referees for not calling the Chiefs for several holding calls when they should have. But I digress, and I ain't got time for it. Sunday night football. This game should be Monday night football. Cowboys at 49ers. The 49ers to me are the best and most complete team in the NFL, and it's not even close. San Francisco 4 at home with an over-under of 45. Dallas's defense forces turnovers like nobody's business, but the 49ers don't make mistakes with the ball.
I think it's going to come down to I think it's also this matchup. I think it's going to be the story is going to be can the Cowboys contain 49ers offense? Because I think flipping it around, whatever, it's going to be whatever thing, but I think it's going to come down to that matchup.
And I think it's the other way around. Dak Prescott has to make plays. Dallas has been scoring more often than not because their defense is giving that offense a short field. The 49ers have virtually no holes in their defense from D-line linebackers down to the secondary. And if you're Dak Prescott and you're being paid to be the guy, the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, these are the kind of games you have to win because you will see this team again in the playoffs.
Yeah.
If you want to go to the Super Bowl, you've got to go through the San Francisco 49ers.
But here's the thing, though. If the Cowboys can't contain the 49ers offense, it doesn't matter what Prescott does.
I completely agree.
So I think that's gonna be the story, the tale, the tale, whatever you want to call it, the story of the game.
Tape. Yeah, and you're looking at, for my money, the NFL's MVP right now, Christian McCaffrey, who is on pace for almost 2,000 yards, just rushing the football. And of course Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has not lost a game in the NFL as a starter. He is 8-0 as a starter so far in the NFL. And again, Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick of his draft year. He shouldn't have been, but another story for another day. We both got the 49ers. Monday Night Football, a rematch. Hey, it's a rematch of Super Bowl II. Packers and Raiders. Vegas gets one at home, despite the fact that they will be starting Aiden O'Connell, who in his NFL debut last week got abused by Khalil Mack, getting sacked 6 times in his NFL debut by one guy. He wore his jersey home. Dude wore silver and black when he got there, and he wore Charger powder white and blue when he left. But they get 1 point. It's a 44.5 over under. I have Green Bay. I think this is a big showcase opportunity for Jordan Love, who has played relatively well. The Raiders defense, just they're putrid. I mean,
Love is starting to come into himself. That's the key thing to do, is he's starting to get his feet on the ground. He's starting to get a feel. I think it should be a good chance for Green Bay to just open everything up and just go crazy.
That's very much a possibility. They've kind of bottle fed Jordan Love. He's averaging just a shade over 250 yards a game, 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's been very efficient with the football. Raiders don't have an offensive line to block for the reigning rushing champion in Josh Jacobs, who's only averaging about 41 and a half yards per game and 1 touchdown through 4 games, which is absolutely ridiculous. I talked to one of my good buddies about who's a big Raiders fan, and the first thing he said was, "Can we have Josh McDaniels thrown off a bridge?" The head coach of the Raiders. He is so done with this dude, and honestly, I agree. The Raiders are trying to clean up the mess that John Gruden left, not just in the front office, but on-field personnel. None of the players that John Gruden used first-round draft picks on are with this team anymore, and one is in prison for the rest of his life. They have a mess to clean up. This game should not be on Monday Night Football. I got Green Bay winning, and I got them taking the points and going completely over the Raiders. So that's where we both are for this week's. That's Week 5's matchups. And we'll be doing this again next Friday, hopefully with no internet freakouts
on both sides.
Yeah, no joke. And then we'll recap our fantasy matchup, see how everybody did in our league. We'll check standings, and then we'll do this again. So be on the lookout. And also to tie back to our regular podcast, Triple B's, those episodes will now be going straight to Spotify. You'll get more videos like this that are YouTube exclusive, and you can find on our YouTube channel, Beards, Brews, and Bros podcast. And this will be under a separate playlist of Triple B's Talk Sports. So until next week, we will see you for more fun shenanigans and football. And as always, be kind and always rewind. K-Rob, Byron, we are out. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
Always a fun time at Triple B's.